Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to introduce you to a controversial new best-selling book called Goodbye, Jae Myung. Jae Myung is that controversial candidate for president, the leading liberal candidate on the Democratic Party ticket here in South Korea, who's embroiled in that land scandal that may actually bring down his candidacy. Check out the other videos and the latest video where I am theorizing that his own party has taken out an insurance policy against him to put in the number 2 guy just in case something happens. Well, this controversial new bestseller outlines the whole case where Jae Myung tried to forcibly and illegally lock up his own brother against his will in a psychiatric hospital. Yeah. So this book was written by a lawyer with the blessing of Jae Myung's older brother's wife. And if you checked out the other videos on my channel that show the contentious family relations that they've had, you would know that his older brother and his wife have not had good relations with Jae Myung and his wife. And his older brother is Jae-sun, so just call him LJS, and Jae Myung LJM. So LJS's wife says that her own brother-in-law, so Jae Myung, is responsible, she thinks, for causing all of the stress and strain that led to the death of her husband. Her husband died in 2017 from cancer, and she thinks that all of this crazy drama that they've had really stressed him out to a point where that probably led to bad health conditions. Well, regardless of however that may have played out, what is documented in this book is this time period in 2012 when Jae Myung was the mayor of Seongnam. And Seongnam is an up-and-coming satellite city at the time, and now it's a wonderful new, it's kind of like a Silicon Valley of Korea. And he was the mayor of that town. And surprisingly and weirdly, there was a high rate of involuntary psychiatric hospitalizations in that town, and 25 of them during when he was mayor, and there was not a one in Goyang. And I was like, well, why are they comparing it to Goyang? Goyang is another city, another satellite city of Seoul, and for benchmarking purposes of data, they like to compare the two, you know, like housing or population. And so they're bringing up, like, it's a little bit odd that under his mayoralship, there were so many involuntary psychiatric hospitalizations. And as I said before, Korean people are very hypersensitive. If you bring up mental health, or if you even say like, oh, she's a psycho, or he's a psycho, they get really mad. So if you ever say that or come across any type of Korean person and you even suggest like, oh, maybe go to a therapist or whatnot, and they're like, no, and you think they're being unreasonable by totally rejecting the idea, even though you think it's not a big deal. Well, it is a big deal in the sense that even now, I didn't even know now, up until like even to this day in 2021, but the laws were amended in 2017. But still, when we're talking about this time period in 2012, it was relatively easy to be vindictive, and if you didn't like a family member, to lock them up in a psychiatric hospital. Oh my goodness. So thankfully, it failed. Apparently, it was a 1-year campaign that Jae Myung's family tried to manipulate, like through text messages, through situations, trying to goad him into kind of situations or arguments to try to document so that then they can go to a doctor or a review panel and say like, look, my older brother, he's crazy, he's trying to cause us harm, he's trying to like, inflict damage upon us, we need to lock him up in a psychiatric hospital. And that's what they tried to do. And so this book kind of documents like all of the messages in this whole campaign to try to get his own family member locked up by manipulating this system where you can label somebody a psycho and then have them locked up against their will, and there was nothing they could do about it. And so this is a very traumatic recent part of Korea's history that Korean people don't really like to talk about, but it kind of has this like underlying kind of charge to a lot of these conversations about mental health and whether people actually get treatment for it or not. And usually it's not, because there is this fear that an unfair case just like this one could be built against you, where eventually if enough cards are stacked up against you, you could be sent away and nobody else would hear from you, and everybody else would abandon you because they would believe that you may be a psycho, and you'd be just left to fend for yourself and never be able to get out. Or even if you get out, you'd be totally branded with the scarlet letter. And so there was a revision to the law in 2017. So now 2 psychiatrists have to diagnose you enough where you have to then be put into a psychiatric hospital involuntarily. So I guess before it was only 1. So you only have to pay off 1 psychiatrist before. Also, there is now a 2-week interval between the 2 diagnoses. So I guess that gives a little bit more time for appeals, because before, if it was just like 1 that you just paid off, 1, boom, done, you're locked up, nothing you can do about it, and there's like no telephone calls that you can probably make to like your lawyer or to somebody else to help you. And so there's a 2-week interval, and then now there's actually like the duration of the maximum hold time was reduced from 6 months to 3 months. But before 6 months, it could be 6 months and then extension. So now the more frequent, I guess, renewal period perhaps gives a little bit more of a chance for you to appeal, I guess. But people still say that, yeah, well, you can probably still manipulate it. There's 3 main criteria that have to be fulfilled. 1, the existence of a mental illness. 2, the necessity for treatment. And 3, danger to oneself and to others. And so you can see through this book, they were trying to get to, through these weird text messages saying like, oh, you should go get mental treatment. Or why don't you go, do your mental treatment, even though he wasn't getting mental treatment. Existence of a mental illness, necessity for a treatment, and then danger to oneself and to others. So now it makes sense why they would, after even just like an argument over a family dinner, where Jae Myung would abuse his authority as the mayor of the city to call in the police and have the police go and arrest his own brother, because then you can document danger to oneself and to others. This is the antithesis of a democracy, and exactly the workhorse, one of the staples of a tyranny, where you can just lock people up because I want to for my own personal gain, and there's nothing you can do about it, and nobody will be there to help you. So this was in 2012. This law to prevent this kind of abuse was revised in 2017. Here we are only 4 years later in 2021, perhaps about to elect this guy into the nation's top office here in South Korea. And I think what this shows is that there are a lot of laws that we think are just so archaic and have disappeared, or things that people just don't do anymore that they might be doing, and they might be doing legally. And so by putting somebody who knows the back workings of what they can weaponize against their enemies is a very dangerous place to be. And so I think it is our duty to, first of all, speak up, just like this guy did when he wrote this book, of what people are doing, when they did it, how they did it, what mechanisms they used. And essentially, when you think about it, Lee Jae-myung just, yes, he manipulated it. Yes, he lied. Yes, he probably, I don't know if legally he broke the law. If you lie, do you break the law? Maybe you do in some ways, maybe not even. But he was using laws that were on the books, and so they needed to be reformed. So bringing that to light. And then also his big thesis point is saying how we are in a very dangerous place when the liars of our society have become our heroes. And we really need to focus on bringing more truth to light. So this is now a bestseller in Korea, and there is just more and more information just, kind of spilling out about this guy that is just making people uncomfortable. People are becoming more disengaged with this election, and I think that is the opposite reaction of what we need in a democracy. If you don't like the two choices, the two main choices you have, don't sit out the election. Which is, I think a lot of people, they're just going to be like, I don't like any of them, so I'm not going to vote. Then that's your own fault. And that is sort of the point of this book as well, is that in a way that makes you complicit as well. We all have to do our part, because by doing nothing, we are also complicit. And it's amazing how many people are still locked up involuntarily, and you don't know how many of them are being manipulated into this situation. And so we probably need to put more attention on this so that it's not used as another way to just force this sort of, well, I can take something from you and there's nothing you can do about it, because that mentality is still a bit rife in Korea, this bullying mentality. And anything that can be used in terms of a mechanism of a social system, believe me, is gonna be used very efficiently. And the weird thing that I found about this, they said that from one statistic, they showed that the number of involuntary hospitalizations for psychiatric conditions was in Gyeonggi province, which includes the city that Lee Jae-myung was the mayor of, and then it was Seoul. That's the total number, but that's because the population there is big. But then when you turn it into percentage of population, like per 100,000 people, the biggest number came from South Gyeongsang province, which includes like Busan, so that area. And so if you want to check out, I just put a link in my Twitter about a recent report that came out again about the horrible imprisonment camp of children that was here in Korea, in Busan, that supposedly was there to lock up vagrant children ahead of the 1988 Olympics, but they were just taking any kids off the street and locking them up, and then basically kidnapping them and giving them like drugs to shut them up and calling them psycho. So again, you see how people are scared of anything that is in the realm of being called a psycho, because it has been so misabused and used to torture and abuse people so often to a scary extent. So maybe we can go over it. It's called the Brothers Hospital, and it was just horrible, and it's been shut down, but people are still living with the trauma and legacy, and I don't think it's really been kind of atoned for in Korea and addressed. It's just been kind of covered up, with a nice little skyscraper, like, we like to do here. And so that, again, I think kind of ties in, and we do not want somebody who has like this mentality, this old school mentality of just like, well, I don't like that person, so let's just lock them up. I hear now, since psychiatric hospitalization is a little bit harder these days, the new way to try to lock up a family member is to send them to an alcohol clinic, like say that they are an alcoholic, and then send them to a treatment facility and lock them up that way. Although I don't think that is as extreme, but that definitely also is a mechanism that some people use, although that is a great advancement here in Korea to have more treatment centers for that, because a lot of times people have used alcohol instead of actual real mental treatment. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So that is a great advancement. But again, if it's a system that could be abused if it's not properly looked at and properly regulated. Not over-regulated, but just people need to see how it can be abused. And things like this book, I think, are really good to show, like, how somebody would even lock up their own brother. So just wanted to bring that up to you. As I get through more of the book, maybe we will go through some of the salient, juicy parts and points. I mean, this is kind of like interesting. Like, you got some pictures of when he was younger, but my goodness, again, just more stuff. But mark my words, we may see a January surprise. All right, guys, talk to you later.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.